In the last stream, we were working on the suit up section of the quest book, crafting our first and unfortunately not only spacesuit, followed by our first rocket, launching that rocket into space to get us to the moon dimension, and then of course right at the end of the last episode, we did unfortunately go through to the moon without our spacesuit chestplate on, dying immediately, and then having to spend an extra half an hour recreating yet another spacesuit, which we currently have over here, to allow us to go back to the moon and reacquire our stuff. Now, what I'm going to go ahead and do here at the suggestion of the Twitch chat is quickly throw down one of these dark oak fancy armor stands from Bibliocraft, which you can make very easily with just some wooden planks. And from there, we can go ahead and kind of fully add this spacesuit on just to have it look a little bit nicer standing there in our base as a good reminder that we should check to make sure that we have our spacesuit on before going to the moon to make sure that we don't die. Now, between streams, I have gone ahead and made a few tweaks to the base. I've also let the base run for a little while again to give us a good backlog on certain resources. I was trying to increase the speed at which we generate netherite scrap. And so over here, I did go ahead and craft up another annihilation plane and another formation plane to place down the debris faster. As I mentioned before, this doesn't work simultaneously, so even if you do have two debris down, it will only do one at a time and then the next one. The reason I put the second one down, though, was to try and reduce the downtime, because you'll see right now, there's kind of a delay between when the arrow fills and when it starts again. And the more of these that you have, the faster the debris gets placed down, and so the arrow can kind of keep going. The whole setup will look more apparent if I do like a quick one of these, and if I request some more debris, because that's going to actually keep more debris in the system. It looks like, surprisingly, our limiting factor is actually the speed at which we're making these fire planks, and unfortunately, this is not a machine that we can actually put any kind of machine frame into to make it faster. So if we wanted to make these quicker, we would just have to make more fluid injectors, which really shouldn't be too difficult. But up here, if I do one of these and even one of these, accelerating the controller accelerates the speed at which the items are placed onto the display stands, which then makes the whole process faster. And now over here, you can kind of see what I was going for, because now when this arrow fills up, it immediately starts over again. And bizarrely, it just does the same piece of debris over and over and over again because it's not quite fast enough to get to the second piece. But having that second piece there does actually make it faster because it keeps the arrow going and keeps the ancient infuser making debris. But as you'll have saw, the problem we run into now is that this is not really fast enough. Even if we were to make more lava planks, this setup just isn't quick enough to provide the debris fast enough to actually make use of that second annihilation and formation plane. And so one of the things we could do here, if we wanted to tweak this, is we could go ahead and switch to using the reaction chamber for making the debris. The recipe is exactly the same. I think the only difference is that it uses a ton of power. It says 56,000 FE. I'm really hoping that that is 56,000 FE total, not 56,000 FE per tick, because otherwise that would be very expensive. I did tweak the recipe here, by the way, to send 5 of everything. Again, that was just a small tweak to try and make this a bit faster, because one of the bottlenecks was also how quick the pattern provider was sending items through to the barrel, and so sending 5 at a time just meant that it didn't have to send quite so many batches. But real quick, I'm going to swap this back down to just sending 1 of each. And actually, I guess to be fair, we could actually leave it at 5. That would mean that we'd make 5 at a time in the reaction chamber as well, but that's probably completely fine. So if we get another pattern provider, we should be able to throw that down onto the reaction chamber, like so. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the reaction chamber, much like the other extended AE2 machines that we have, is going to be able to auto-export to a specific side. We want that side, of course, to be the top here. Interestingly, this interface is different to this interface, because over here, it says enabled, and they all start off disabled. Over here, it doesn't say enabled, and they all actually started out enabled. So not quite sure of the discrepancy there, but either way, we should be able to go ahead and grab some more Fluix cable, and then of course, just connect that up to our pre-existing line of Fluix cable, assuming of course that we have enough channels available, which we do, the device is online, and with that, we should be able to go ahead and generate the debris a bit faster. The only small tweak here is that we do also need to put some lava into here as well. Thankfully, that should also be fairly straightforward if we grab an exporter. We can throw that onto the back of this guy and just tell it to export lava. Actually, chat does make a good point here in that we can actually send the lava as part of the pattern, which is going to make more sense because it frees up an extra channel on our system. So if we do something like this, by default, it's going to send a full bucket. It actually uses 1 bucket per recipe. And so we want to change this to 5 buckets like that, re-encode the recipe, and then drop that in over here. It's at that point that we're then going to want to take these out and actually cancel the craft that has already been requested, at which point the requester should immediately send a new request in, and we should actually start to see this working. Let me take a quick look up here. The good news is it doesn't look like it's using 50,000 FE per tick, which is what I expected, and is good. Speaking of 50,000 FE per tick, one thing I have done between streams is I have gone ahead and left our second time in a bottle inside of the TIAB charger full time. And so, despite the fact that it uses 50,000 FE per tick, we're generating so much power that it really doesn't seem to matter too much. And I think it's going to be tremendously helpful for us going forward to have a staggering amount of time in a bottle usage available to us. It's just going to make accelerating things like the production of netherite scrap or like the conversion of debris into ancient debris way faster. And it's going to kind of just smooth over a lot of the imperfections in the base and allow us to progress even if we don't necessarily have everything we need to progress. And the good news is that this is way faster. So we should hopefully now see this kind of running at a constant speed. We should hopefully see this arrow always doing the progress that needs to be done. If we really wanted to, we could upgrade to a hellish Technium machine frame. That is only a 10% boost from 70% to 80%, and so it would only be a tiny bit faster. For now, I'm going to leave that as it is, and we can now finally get started on the next bit of this suit up questline, which of course has to be done over on the moon. So between streams, I have gone ahead and set up a new platform here on the moon. It is, of course, the exact same platform that we have in the nether. For those wondering, it is 51 wide by 27 deep, not including the white asteroid bricks. And so that would make it 53 by 29, actually, with those white asteroid bricks in total. I raised this up a bit just so we don't have to worry about the actual terrain of the moon if we do intend to expand this in the future. And of course, I've moved the waystone up here just so we can get here nice and quickly. I also did go ahead and set up a new quantum ring. You'll see I kind of swapped these to being kind of parallel to each other. We do, of course, still have our third quantum ring over here, which is wirelessly charging up our wireless crafting terminal. But this was basically the same as every time we've done it previously. Get some TNT, get a singularity, get some ender dust, blow it up, create 2 quantum in singularities, and then connect those together. And so now what we need to do is we need to get some moon sand, which I believe is available right on the surface here. I did also go ahead and throw down a flight block as well to make sure that we can fly at least a little bit here in the moon. The range is not massive, but it is big enough to cover our entire platform, which I think should be fine. We are also going to need some moon stone, which I believe is available just on the lower levels here. It totally is. Now, we do have some bad guys, and these guys look a little terrifying, actually, so I'm going to move a bit further away and maybe harvest my moon. Whoops, of course, the good news about the moon is that there's not much gravity. And so even if you do fly outside of the radius of your flight block, you don't die straight away, which is nice. That is not what we're after. That is basalt. I want moonstone. Cool. So once we have the moonstone, we can craft that into moonstone bricks. And once we have the moonstone bricks, we can, by the looks of it, get moon cobblestone by just crushing regular moonstone. And we can set up a moon quarry with those moonstone bricks to allow us to generate moonstone dust automatically. So here we can turn moon cobblestone into moonstone dust inside of the moon quarry. That does mean that we're going to need an unlimited amount of moonstone. And it looks like we can make moonstone using an interdimensional infuser with regular stone and a moon globe. The moon globe is made using a cheese block, and I believe the cheese block is kind of further down in the quest line. So I think initially we're going to have to mine the moonstone by hand and kind of put it into the moon quarry. Once we progress a bit further and we unlock the ability to make the interdimensional infuser, I think that's when we can kind of fully automate the production of this moonstone dust. So real quick, let me see about doing a quick /home, just because otherwise we'd have to kind of nerd pull our way back to our moon base. And then once we're back here, we should be able to look at making that moon quarry. For this, we just need 2 more netherite gears and 1 more hellish technium machine frame, all of which our base, of course, knows how to make. And then the actual multi-block here is, again, fairly large, but again, not actually that difficult to make. If we bookmark the placer, we can hold down Alt and we can see that we need 4 dimensional detectors, 84 structural glass, 133 moonstone, 43 reinforced machine casing, and 104 wooden scaffolding, all stuff that we've made a ton of before. And a little bit of auto crafting later, and of course 1 purchase of a moon quarry placer later, we can place down all of the required blocks here for our moon quarry, which is of course going to require power. We can give that power via our quantum entangler porter, of course making sure that's set to power output and giving power down to this guy. So now if we put moon cobblestone into here, which I did get by putting some moonstone into one of our crushers in the overworld, we can actually start to get some of this moonstone dust. And then from there, we need to run that moonstone dust through an industrial strainer. The industrial strainer looks pretty similar here. We need another hellish technium machine frame, 2 more netherite gears. Let's get those requested. And then we also need 6 moonstone dust. Thankfully, this multi-block is much, much smaller. It is just made with reinforced machine casing, dimensional detectors, and machine gearboxes. Again, that should be pretty straightforward. And once we have that, we can begin to strain, actually using meshes, the moonstone dust and get some of the dirty Neptune dust, dirty Dash dust, and dirty Ostrom dust that are then going to allow us to move on to the next section of the quest book. The only thing we've not made before here is the machine gearbox. And the machine gearbox, by the looks of it, I'm going to assume is made in the ultimate crafting table because there is a long line going directly from the ultimate crafting table to the machine gearbox. This is a little pricey, but shouldn't be too difficult. We can request more reinforced machine casing. The moonstone brick we have, the brass gears are easy enough to make, and of course we do still have a decent amount of hellish technium nuggets, and we've got a lot of netherite scrap and ultimate technium, so if we needed to make even more hellish technium, we could definitely make that happen. And again, not too long later, we have some brass gears, we have some hellish technium machine frames. We can craft up, I believe, the industrial strainer main block just as soon as we get 2 more of those netherite gears. Those are going to come in any second now. And then over here, we can hopefully craft 2 of these machine gearboxes. We can. Nice. And so that should be, I think, basically everything that we need. It is, we could just do with purchasing the strainer placer. Let's have a look. Can we get that from here? We totally can. Again, this does have to be built on the moon, and as we saw, this is actually a fairly small multi-block. It's a 3x4x3. So what I'll do, I think, is potentially place this down like right here, like that. Shift right click, place down the actual strainer itself. Again, I'm assuming that yes, this does of course require some power, so we are going to have to take yet another quantum entangler porter. I don't think it matters at all if we place it inside of the multi-block like that. And then now, if we take some of our moonstone dust, we can place that in here. I do not know why that is filling up with bricks. That's because I've set items to output, not power to output. But my question now is that, do we have a problem somewhere? Because there shouldn't be bricks coming through. There also shouldn't be any enriched flint coming through either. So that makes me think that we have like a mistake somewhere in the system, and one of our machines is pumping bricks and enriched flint into the power output channel of the quantum entangler porters. I will go and investigate that momentarily. For now though, if we turn that off, we can put moonstone dust into here, and of course we need to get some kind of mesh. It looks like there are 4 meshes we can choose from, those being obsidian, and heavy, and netherite. I'm assuming obsidian we can make. We can. This is a tier 6 mesh that has 2,500 uses. Netherite is also a tier 6 mesh, which actually has less uses and is, I think, more expensive for us. Heavy does have more uses, but requires these heavy cores that I don't think we can make. And then end requires end stuff that we also don't have. And so let me go ahead and get, I guess, just an obsidian mesh for now and place that in. That's going to go ahead and begin making the dusts for us. Chat is saying that they don't think that the meshes actually use durability inside the strainer here. If that's true, that would be pretty great for us. Let's put you in there. It does look like that is the case. The strainer does not appear to be actually using the mesh, and with that, we are getting all of the dusts. From there, we just need to enrichment chamber those dusts to convert them from their dirty versions into the non-dirty equivalents. So right about here, let's do you, you, and you. And once we have at least one of each of those, that should be all of those quests complete. And it is. Nice. So there are a few quests that we've yet to complete here. There's one for Moonfruit, which drops from alien zombies. I assume we have to kill them to get that. And then there's also two quests here. One to make lunar gas, which it says is made from moonstone dust. And then one to make enriched moon dust, which you get by, you guessed it, enrichment chambering the moonstone dust. So if we have either more moon dust or moon cobblestone, neither of which we have, but both of which we can get. If we quickly crush some moonstone here, that will get us some moon cobblestone. And then, of course, we can run that moon cobblestone through our new moon quarry right over here, at which point we can get the moon dust. And then the moon dust is going to get us enriched moon dust. And then from there, we can use that in a chemical oxidizer to get lunar gas. And it looks like we're going to use that to make blank moon ore, which presumably, if we look at the next section of the quest book, is the next quest and is going to be used, you guessed it, to make more dimensional ores for yet more dimensional ore extractors. That actually seems completely fine. So let me do one of these, and we will turn autosort on and then off real quick. That's going to get us the enriched moonstone dust. Fantastic. We, of course, do have a few dimensional infusers kind of over on this side of the base. Whether or not we're going to hijack these, though, is a different question, because I don't know if they're going to be able to do their normal crafts if they have lunar gas inside. They're also not too difficult to make, so I think it's probably just worth us getting another one and sticking it on the moon. Although, if we only need to get one of each of these, that means that in total we're going to need 24 moon ore, which means 24 blank moon ore, which is 192 moonstone, with just 24 buckets of lunar gas, and you get 8 per enriched moon dust, and so I think we already have enough of the enriched moon dust to make all of these. And so if that's the case, then we can probably just go ahead and hijack one of our pre-existing machines then. So what I'm going to do, I guess, is I'm going to take some of the moonstone that we have. Unfortunately, we've turned most of ours into moon cobblestone, so we're going to have to grab a bit more moonstone. Thankfully, there is a ton of it here on the moon. We can grab some of this. There is another guy down here. Let me quickly see if we can't get that moon fruit. We totally cannot. We got an ice shard. I don't know if that's the right guy that we're supposed to be killing for that, but that got us some moonstone. Let me get a bit more because we need 3 stacks to actually make this happen. Once we have 3 stacks of moonstone, though, it should be a fairly simple process of putting that moonstone into the dimensional infuser with that lunar gas. Now, to get that, we are going to need another chemical oxidizer. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to temporarily kind of hijack this dimensional infuser, and we'll throw it in our moonstone. We can put our chemical oxidizer on top like this. Power is already coming into that, which is good. We can throw it in our enriched moon dust, grab another one of our quantum entangler porters temporarily to do something like this. And so now that should hopefully begin processing this into lunar gas. We can then eject that lunar gas down to the bottom, and from there we should start to see the moonstone getting converted into blank moon ore. Of course, we can also go ahead and accelerate that as well, putting in more moonstone as and when it's needed. And you can already see here the benefit of having basically unlimited time in our time in a bottle, because now we have all 24 blank moon ore. My first question here is, if I put more regular stone back in here, does it do the regular craft? It totally does. Good. So we don't have to worry about leaving the lunar ore in there. We can leave it in there, and it has no negative effects on the production of skystone. So we can just turn that back to how it was before, and it's just going to work. We can now take the blank moon ore and combine it with enough Neptune dash and Ostrom dust to get 8 moon Ostrom ore, moon dash ore, and moon Neptune ore. And of course, we are getting those dusts slowly but surely over here. And once we have at least 8 of each dust, which really did not take that long, over here we can do something like this, and that's going to get us a ton of the moon Ostrom ore. And I am a fool, because that is way more moon Ostrom ore than I needed. I put all of that in. I should have specifically put in the 8 that I needed. Let me tweak that so we have exactly 8. And I guess let me hijack this once more so I can make even more blank moon ore. Again, the good news here is we've got way more lunar gas than we need, so that really did not take us too long at all. And of course, we can then just go ahead and re-engage that back into making the skystone again. Now back over here, we can actually do the correct thing, which is put in 8 dash dust to get 8 moon dash ore, and then 8 Neptune dust to get the 8 Neptune ore. And from there, we can go ahead and take these and run them, you guessed it, through another dimensional infuser, which means, once again, hijacking this setup right here, swapping it out with the dash ore, and then the Neptune ore, and then finally, once that is done, the Ostrom ore. Cool. And so with all three of those, finally, we should now be able to go ahead and repeat the setup that we've done a million times over, this time, of course, over on the moon, and it's basically going to be the exact same setup that we have over here in the Nether. We're going to throw down 3-dimensional extractors, 1 for dimensional Neptune ore, 1 for dimensional Ostrom ore, and 1 for dimensional Dash ore. I think I'm probably going to look a little ahead here and see that dimensional Cesium ore is also coming up, and so whilst we're at it, I think I will build 4-dimensional ore extractors over on the moon, and that should hopefully set us up quite nicely for the next chapter of the quest book as well. So I'm currently in the process of requesting the stuff required to make the dimensional ore extractors, and for the second time today, our big limiting factor is this inscriber making the different tiers of processor. My first thought was to put down 3 more inscribers and just have 1 dedicated to making each tier of circuit, but one thing the Twitch chat has recommended here is that if we combine a regular inscriber with a concurrent processor and 3 capacity cards, we can make the extended inscriber, and the idea here is that this should work in basically the exact same way as the regular inscriber, but it should be able to do 4 jobs at once, and it can also stack items as well. So the stack amount is configurable, but if we click here, you can see next inscription job, and you can see that it's actually doing, or capable of doing, up to 4 jobs at once. Now, I'm also pretty sure that if I change the stack size to 1, what that should mean is it should kind of distribute things amongst the 4 different jobs kind of more effectively, I think. We are, of course, going to have to make sure that, just like everything else, that this is set to export up to the top, like this. So auto export through a side up like that. Perfect. And so now, if we leave that at 1, we should see all of these job slots being filled. The ones that already have more than 1 are going to have more than 1, but I think that's fine. And now, anytime a job is sent, this is able to do 4 jobs at once, thus making it just that little bit faster, and hopefully that is basically good to go. Now, we did take some things out, so I have to put this back in to give it that final item. Once that final item is done, everything else is going to complete, and we should have all of the stuff required in here to get our dimensional ore extractors up and running. Again, just a small little quality of life improvement. And again, yet more dimensional ore extractors later, and we have dimensional Neptunium ore, dimensional Dash ore, and dimensional Ostrom ore all being generated, all connected up with trim to a draw controller, and that draw controller is of course connected up with a storage bus to our quantum ring, and so we do have access to all of those ores in our system. And so now we can actually look at the next quest here for the interdimensional infuser. To make the interdimensional infuser, we do need 1 dimensional machine frame, which I guess is thematic, along with 2 netherite gears and 6 of any of the dimensional moon ores. We are going to have to request 1 of those dimensional machine frames. I don't think that should take too long to come through. And then I have already gone ahead and purchased the interdimensional infuser placer, and I also put in a request for 54 machine vents. We have those, as well as 8 dimensional detectors, which I have now taught our system how to make. 59 reinforced machine casing. I requested even more of that than we needed, because I feel like we're needing a ton of that every single time we build something in this pack. The quantum entangler porters we have, and then finally the machine circuitry we also have. So this is a 7x7x7 multi-block structure, and it's essentially a really, really big furnace, because in order to actually smelt any of the Dash, the Ostrom, or the Neptunium dusts into ingots, you have to use this interdimensional infuser. So I do have to decide where I'm going to put this, and that is a pretty good question, because I'm kind of thinking of putting the LUNAR TECHNIUM machine at the back, much like we've done with our Hellish Technium machine. And so that does somewhat limit us on space, but I think I might put it down kind of right about here. We can then shift right click, and we get a very large cube. So, of course, as per usual, we need to put down some power for this guy, which we can do like this. Make sure we're set to power, and make sure we're set to extract. And so now we can, for example, take some of our Dash dust, place that into here, Okay, so I'm being told by the Twitch chat that in here, this normally looks like this. This is what the inside of the Dimensional Infuser looks like, and apparently, I think there's just an oversight in the quest book here. It doesn't mention it anywhere, which is unfortunate, but I'm being told that all around the Quantum Entangler porters, we need to put down manually some dimensional ore. So if I grab, let's say, some dimensional Ostrom ore here, apparently what we need to do is in here, do something like this. I don't think it matters which one of the ores we put in here, so long as there is a dimensional, I assume, moon ore, although I'm not entirely certain on that because, again, there's no documentation on it. I'm going on what the Twitch chat is telling me right here. But then if we do something like this and kind of replace these down, we can then put the top back on, and now that's going to work? Yeah, now that totally works. That's really unfortunate that it doesn't tell you on the placer that you need those, and it doesn't tell you in the quest either. If you hover over this, it also doesn't mention it anywhere on here that you need those. That's definitely an oversight that could do with fixing, but in good news, we are now making Dash Ingots, which is the next quest, and now we actually need to upgrade to a new type of armor, the Jet Armor. And the Jet Armor here is necessary because I believe both Neptunium and Ostrom are radioactive ingots. It says here, part of the jet suit protects from radiation and provides flight. It looks like it does require fuel. I'd be interested to see how fast it burns through the fuel to give us that flight. But in order to make the armor here, we need to get a bunch of wool, a bunch of tinted glass, and then a ton of Dash ingots. We need Dash for every single one of these. And so we do have two options here as to how we're going to go ahead and proceed. We could, if we wanted to, get more Moonstone dust, put the Moonstone dust into the strainer, and then, of course, if we wanted to accelerate the strainer, to get more of the Dash dust that we can then enrich and then run through our interdimensional infuser to get the Dash ingots. But that doesn't seem particularly quick, and it's also not really an automated solution. The reason that it's probably going to be a good idea for us to get an automated solution is that there is also a quest here for the Dash gear, and you'll see that it does say that it's a LUNAR TECHNIUM part, and if we press U, we can confirm that it is required as part of the LUNAR TECHNIUM. And so I think what we're probably going to want to do, if we're going to be sensible and kind of prepare for the future, is set up 3 more lines of mechanism machinery to convert our dimensional Ostrom, dimensional Dash, and dimensional Neptunium ore from its dimensional ore form all the way through into dust form. Again, unfortunately, once we do this, we're going to run it through the chemical dissolution chamber, through the chemical washer, through the crystallizer, through the chemical injection chamber, and the purification chamber, and the crusher, and the enrichment chamber. Then the final thing is that we have to run it through the interdimensional infuser. And we do have to do that for all 3 of these. And so it also might not be a terrible idea for us to get 3 interdimensional infusers so that we can have 1 constantly smelting Dash, 1 smelting Ostrom, and 1 smelting Neptunium. And another bunch of mechanism machine configuring later. And we now have 3 more lines that I've managed to kind of nestle in between our pre-existing lines. I've also kind of moved away from using these basic logistical transporters here because we end up with a problem like this, which is not really what you want to see. I don't really know why I set them up like this in the first place. The mechanism machines do, of course, auto-export, and so you can just put the drawer directly on the end of the line, and so long as this is set to auto-eject, which it is, it will just auto-eject. And so I've kind of been moving all of the storage drawers to just be directly on the end of their specified machine line. And now we have 1 for Dash, 1 for Neptunium, and 1 for Ostrom. So far, I've really only upgraded the Ostrom line. The other lines can also be upgraded as well going forward. And we have 3 export buses exporting all of the dimensional ores from the moon here to the overworld. Unfortunately, we are going to have to go back to the moon as well, because of course now we need to send these back to the moon in order to get them smelted, but our AE2 system should be able to take care of that quite easily, because we have the remote upgrades giving the system access to all of those dusts. To make this work, I did do a little bit of tweaking to our AE2 system. Specifically, what I've done is I have gone ahead and disconnected the dense cable here. So previously, we had this very long dense cable running from here, and we did previously have it fully saturated. We were using all 32 channels because it ran all the way along, and then all the way across, down, and along the bottom, and we were connecting everything to that one line. I've since disconnected that, and so at some point we can go and kind of pick up a lot of this cabling here because it's no longer needed, and instead what I've done is connected that up to the bottom of this guy right here. So under here, we are now connected here. We've got 15 out of 32 channels used, which gives us a bunch of extra capacity on that guy because he, of course, has 32 dedicated channels right here. And so that's just made it a bit easier for us to connect up, for example, these 3 exporters, because up until now, we had no channel space available on that long line. I've since tweaked it to where now we have about 15 more channels available down here, and we also have about 15 more channels available over here as well. And so we should be pretty good on channels, at least for the not so distant future. Now though, what we need to do is we need to take all of this dash, we've got 200 plus of it, head on through to the moon, throw that in to here. Of course, it is very slow, but we do have 12 hours still in our time in a bottle. We can make this way faster, and that's going to very quickly get us all of the dash ingots that we're going to need to make the dash armor. And then outside of dash ingots, it's really just a ton of wool and some of the tinted glass, which of course is just amethyst shards, all of which we made a bunch of in the last stream. And so if I quickly head back to the overworld, I think we might have some amethyst shards in here. We do indeed, we have 11. I think we also have some in the system as well. We got 13 more. And so I'm fairly certain that that's like everything that we're going to need to make the tinted glass. 12 might not be enough. It's not. We need 25 in total. And so you know what? That is actually completely fine. Give me another like 64 amethyst shards. To do that, we do, of course, once again have to disconnect the replicator here. I think to do that, last time I just broke this and replaced it. And that frees that up to make the amethyst shards that we need, and of course we can make that faster as well. I am being very liberal with my time in a bottle because we now have 63 hours inside this one. You know what, let's swap it out. Let's put the 11-hour one away. Let's also go ahead and grab wool from the system, because with that wool, we should be able to make some of the other jet armor pieces. For example, the chestplate. And also let me clear my inventory just a little bit. I did make some compacting drawers here, and I did actually put them down over in front of the new mechanism lines, but then it turns out we don't want them here because this is just dust. We actually want these compacting drawers over on the moon after we've run all of the dash, ostrum, and neptunium through the interdimensional infuser. But back over here, we have the chest plate. We can hopefully make the leggings, and we can also make the boots. Nice. And if we have enough amethyst over in here, we totally do, we should be able to make even more tinted glass. Boom. And boom, 46 is more than 25, and so that should be everything that we need to make the helmets as well. We're actually just missing a tiny bit of dash, but thankfully over here, we've got an extra stack. That is definitely more than we need. Boom, and boom. Cool. So I'm fairly certain that we should be able to wear this on the moon without dying. So if we put this away and we swap it out for this, not only should this give us creative flight, hopefully creative flight on the moon as well, but it should also protect us in the same way that the regular suit does. We do, of course, have to put oxygen into this. I don't currently know if you die instantly if you don't have oxygen in the same way that you do if you're not wearing the right armor, or if you just kind of slowly die as if you were out of hunger. I don't know how that works if we run out of oxygen, so we should keep an eye on our oxygen level, but once we have the oxygen here, we'll head back through to the moon, and from there, we can actually start to process the neptunium and ostrum dusts into their ingot form, and so long as we're wearing this armor here, we should be able to hold the neptunium and the ostrum without... Okay, I was worried for a second I might die immediately. I didn't, but we should be able to hold the neptunium and the ostrum in ingot form without taking damage. If we touch these without wearing the jet suit, we will take radiation damage, which is not ideal. So let's, of course, accelerate this all the way up, even though it does use a lot of power, and we'll do the same with the neptunium as well. We, of course, only need to get one block, really, of each of these to complete the next quests, although I'm assuming that we need more than that going forward. Let's do a quick one of these, and let's also do a quick one of these. Cool. So they do want us to get a dash block as well. That should be completely fine. Let's do one of those. And with each of these blocks, we can now make the Mercury globe, the Venus globe, and the Mars globe. Each one of these are made also inside of the interdimensional infuser. And so if we quickly throw this guy back in here, and again, really no reason not to accelerate it all the way up because we've still got 61 hours, we can do this, we can do this, and we can do this. Nice. There are two more quests here, one for an ostrum rod and one for a neptunium plate. I'm assuming that both of those are LUNAR TECHNIUM parts. They are indeed. The good news is that that's kind of 3 of the LUNAR TECHNIUM parts almost taken care of. So it really shouldn't be too difficult to automate those 3, which is kind of us more than a third of the way towards LUNAR TECHNIUM already, because don't forget, one of the ingredients is Hellish Technium, and so with the LUNAR TECHNIUM taken care of, that should be fine. Now, over here, is this the rod one? It is. We do have a problem over here, and that problem is that if we want to make Neptunium plates, that's fine, because the Neptunium metal press, which is this one, is working just fine. The trouble, though, is that if I take the Ostrom and I drop it on the rod press, because of the way that the redstone works here, it actually stops both of these metal presses. For example, if I break this, it's going to bring them both back online. I was really hoping it would just stop the first metal press and not both of them. That does mean that if we want to automate the production of Ostrom rods, we might have to do it a different way, although to be fair, I imagine that we're probably going to make both Ostrom rods and Neptunium rods and the dash gears inside our smeltery anyway, so that's probably not a massive problem. It does basically, though, mean that this metal press, for now at least, is entirely useless. Either way, that is basically this quest taken care of. If we wanted to get the satisfaction of hearing the sound of the quest line completing, though, we would go ahead and drop 4 dash onto this belt, at which point we should get our dash gear and hopefully complete the quest line. And we did. Nice. So now we can move on to the Cheesium section of the quest book here. And in order to get going with this questline, I believe we're going to need to be back on the moon. We can make Venus Stone by placing Moonstone in the interdimensional infuser with the Venus globe. We can make Mercury Stone the same way with the Mercury globe, and you guessed it, we can make Mars Stone the same way with the Mars globe. Then, I see, we can use the Empowerer to combine Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Moonstone with Moon Curd to make Space Cheese. Moon Curd is made by using the Fluid Injector. We do need to make another one of these, not only for this recipe, but we also, don't forget, right at the start of the episode, realized that we needed a second one of these to make the fire planks faster. But either way, to make the Moon Curd, we need to combine Moon Fruit, which we currently don't have, with milk. Milk, we actually don't have. There is a milker. Does the milker just generate this? It requires 1 entity in a 5-block radius. So we need to have a cow down, and we need to get a milker. I assume we can get a cow via the summoning block? Yeah, we totally can. A block that we've not used in quite some time, but fine, we can make that happen. Which mob do we need to kill? We do need to kill one of these guys to get the moon fruit. Okay, let me take my atomic disassembler, which does have a decent amount of durability on it. Unfortunately, it is kind of daytime on the moon. It's very bright out here now, so there actually aren't that many of these guys around. We can come back, though, once we've done some other bits. So let's see, real quick, if we can't get the milker going. That should be fairly straightforward. I'll bookmark that. Another fluid injector should also be pretty straightforward. It says we're missing diamonds. There's no way that's true, right? I mean, there is a way that's true. Although, I imagine that for some reason, it's because that is not connected up with... Oh, I know what I've done here. I see what's happened. I have messed up my entire system. What has happened here? I've run some 82 cable through the floor, in doing so, removing some trim. And that trim is, of course, what was actually connecting our things together. So real quick, let me kind of break this and break this. I need trim here and here. That should bring diamonds back online, presumably. And then we just need to run that 82 cable kind of under and around so that it connects up. There we go. Okay, everything is back online. Right, so can we make the milker? We can. That didn't require diamonds. Can we then get another fluid injector? I think the answer is definitely yes. One thing we might have to do manually, though, is request... oh, no, we do have 2 ultimate fluid tanks. Nice. Okay, so it's just a case of waiting for the ultimate Technium machine frame, and then that's also going to be good to go. I'm going to request 2 more ultimate fluid tanks, and... well, I guess 3 more, and a machine frame as well, because I want to make yet another one of those so that we can double up on lava planks over here, because I think these are still a limiting factor in our netherite production, and so we'll come back to that, though. For now, we need to reacquire our summoning block from the start of the series, place this down, and to summon a cow, we need 1 of these guys, the ersatz leather, and we also need to get any kind of dirt or grass. Now, I forget if this needs to go... I think it just goes inside like this, and we turn it on. Yeah, and that's going to produce a cow for us. Perfect. And so now, we need to have that cow kind of like, I guess, locked in place. because we need the cow to provide milk to the milker. I don't know if this has to be like a permanent fixture of the base that we have forever, but just in case it does, let me hook this up with the quantum entangler porter and set it up in such a way that the cow is like permanently affixed above the milker. We can craft an animal net here from Techopolis Utilities, and that is going to allow us to fairly easily acquire and move the cow. Right-click to pick him up, and then right-click again to put him down. Shift right-click if you're putting it onto a block like the milker. And cool, that should, I think, then just start to produce milk. It does produce milk, and I assume that we can extract the rate of suction if we use our time in a bottle here to really milk this cow for all she's worth. So that is the milk taken care of, and so now we kind of just need to get the moon fruit, because I assume if we wanted to, we could do something like this with one of our fluid pipes to extract into the fluid infuser. I don't think this needs to be like a long-term solution, this here specifically for making the moon curd, but I am being told by the Twitch chat that we do need milk for the late game as well, and so we are probably going to have to keep this setup here with our cow and maybe even expand it if we need a ton of milk at some point. For now though, let's head back. It is now nighttime here, and so we need to find a couple of these guys. I'm hoping they're not too strong, and we need to try and see if we can't get just one of those drops. And we totally did. Look at that, moon fruit acquired. So I don't know how much it's worth it, but just to play it on the safe side, I am going to teach this moon fruit to my replication system. That way, if we need more of it, we don't have to go and fight those moon men again. We can just request it via this system. For example, right here, if I request 64, we have the ability to make 35,000, and so we're just going to go ahead and make that happen. Cool. From there, we can take the moon fruit and we can drop it over into the fluid injector. The fluid injector, of course, does require power. We could throw down yet another quantum entangler porter, but we do already have a quantum entangler porter right here, so I'm feeling like we might as well save ourselves a little bit on the resource front and just do something like that, and maybe throw down a few facades just to cover that up. Cool, that gets us moon curd, and then once we have the moon curd, then we can look at using the stones to actually progress further forward. So real quick, I'm going to go ahead and harvest some more moonstone. I'm going to run that moonstone through the interdimensional infuser, and once we have at least one of each of these, we can make the moon cheese. Let me quickly check how we get dimensional cheesium ore though. So it looks like we're going to take the space cheese, and we are going to melt that into molten cheese. Then we can use 2 buckets of molten cheese, which is 8 space cheese. So we need 8 space cheese to get 2 buckets of molten cheese. 2 buckets of molten cheese with any dimensional ore gets us dimensional cheesium ore. Then I'm assuming we can just slot that into our dimensional ore extractor on the moon, and we're going to start getting dimensional cheesium ore, at which point we can then presumably process the dimensional cheesium ore, I guess, through the same line that we've been doing for everything else. It looks like we're going to have to set up another mechanism line of machines, and at the end of that line, I'm really hoping that we get cheese. We do, we get cheesium ingots. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go and get the Mercury stone, Venus stone, and Mars stone, and then we'll see if we can't make some space cheese. And once we have more moonstone, we can do this and this. That's going to get us Mercury stone again. We are still at 61 hours, so let's go all the way up to as fast as we possibly can. And then we're just going to swap out Mercury for Mars, do the same thing again. And then, of course, once that's done, we'll swap out Mars for Venus and do the same thing again. Okay, and once we have at least 8 moon curd back over here, we should now be able to place the moon curd in the middle, like this, and then we just surround that with Mars stone, Moon stone, Mercury stone, and Venus stone, and of course, if we wanted to, we could do one of these as well to make that a bit faster, and that should get us cheese. It does, so we're going to repeat that 8 times to get the 8 cheese that we need, and once we have that 8 cheese, we're going to throw it into our smeltery to melt that down into the 2 buckets of molten cheese, at which point we then can go ahead and hopefully create our dimensional cheesium ore. And once we have our 8 cheese, let's throw that into this guy. I'm going to clear out the black brick there, and as we saw earlier, we just need one of any dimensional ore, I think, up in here, and we get dimensional cheesium ore. Nice, we'd have to take that quest, and that is now done. Fantastic. So, over on the moon, we're going to throw that into this guy right here. Let's quickly break this, drop in the cheesium ore. Perfect. And, of course, rebuild it. And so now that should begin making us cheesium ore. of course, we can give that a quick head start, and I'm going to have to put this in manually because right now that is locked. So that's Cesium ore taken care of, and so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back and set up another line of mechanism machines and export the dimensional Cesium ore to those machines so we can start to get these Cesium ingots. And there we go, we now have yet another line nestled into our ever-increasing wall of mechanism lines, and so now we have Cesium ore that we can take out. And if I put that back, I can also complete the quest for getting a block of it as well. Fantastic. Let's make sure we lock that drawer. And now we're going to do more of another mod that we've been playing with a ton, and that is, of course, the Hostile Neural Networks mod. So if we take the Cesium ore up here, we need to expand out our Hostile Neural Networks line of machinery because we can now use the Cesium ingots here to craft up these alien data models. To do it, we do need a lot of hellish technium because we need to get 4 more data models. We need to get a Modular data model, a Martian Raptor data model, a Star Crawler data model, and then either a Pigra or Pygra data model or a Pygra Brute data model. Looking at the output, it looks like the Brute is the better version, and so I don't really see a reason not to go for this. So we need to get 4 of these alien data models, which means we do need to get 24 hellish Technium ingots. We currently have 3, so we need 21 more, which means kind of siphoning off 21 ultimate Technium ingots here. That should not be a problem for us. I'm assuming, as per usual, our limiting factor here is antimatter. It totally is, and if we wanted to increase that production, we could, of course, just drop in some more fungus, which I feel like we do every episode now. We drop fungus directly into one of these to make sure that we can increase that. While I'm here, I might as well drop a few ender pearl crates in as well to make sure our quantum is doing all right. That's going to make more of the unstable matter, which of course is going to make even more of the antimatter for us. But for us, we just need to put the ultimate technium over into our hellish technium machine. I think we're pretty good on everything else. We even have, a few thousand netherite ingots, a few hundred netherite blocks. I think this all should be just fine, and those are going to come in slowly but surely. And so, yeah, I guess what I'm going to do now is wait for the hellish technium to come in, and while I wait for the hellish technium to come in, I guess we could request 4 more model frameworks, and I'm just going to go ahead and request the simulation chambers and loot fabricators and set those up over here so that we are ready when we craft up the data models. Alright, so even more simulation chambers and loot fabricators later. I did have to tear down the nether portal to make room for it, but I don't really think we're going to need it going forward. We have the waystone, and we can always rebuild it if we need to. We do still have the nether portal frames. So now we should be able to go ahead and make 5 alien data models. I initially thought we only needed 4. However, it turns out we need 4 here to get this quest line complete, but looking ahead at the Lunar Technium Ingot here, we need Moonfruit, and Moonfruit is acquired via an alien zombie prediction, which is not one of the ones listed in this section of the quest book. So we do need 5, which is what I've put down here. So now we can go ahead and craft up the Martian Raptor. That one, oh, we do need even more hellish technium, actually. I did not account for the fact that every single one of these requires an extra 6 nuggets. The good news is that should be completely fine. We do have more ultimate technium coming in. As per usual, every time I do this, the fluidizer keeps turning off whenever I relog on, and so I do have to go and manually turn that on every single time. That's fine. That should continue making more ultimate technium. Up here, though, we can grab a few more of these. We don't need that many because we only need a few nuggets per craft. And then back over in the nether, if we just whack that into here, we can, of course, give this a quick time in a bottle to make it faster. But our limiting factor continuously has actually been oil. Again, thankfully, we have so much time that we can make the oil come in nice and quickly. And, of course, once we get at least one of the hellish technium ingots, that should be enough for us to get started with a couple of these data models. So let's go ahead and try that again. Can we get the Martian Raptor data model? We totally can. Let's throw that in over here. That's going to start getting the prediction matrices, and that's going to get going. Next up, let's go for, in fact, let me bookmark a few of these here so I can just grab them from JEI as opposed to having to search through the menus. I do want to make sure I get the Brute version because it's not really more expensive and it does the exact same job. Let's get the Modular. Let's also get the Starcrawler, and let's finally get the Brute. We need real leather for the Brute, eh? That should be fine because we can zap rotten flesh, which we have 70,000 of. So let's go ahead, I guess, and just do a quick one of these. Perfect. That is more than enough leather for us to get this guy. Cool. And then, of course, as we saw before, the final one is the alien zombie data model, which we can also do. Nice. Okay, so if we throw all of these in, it is possible, maybe even likely, that we are going to need to increase the production rate of our prediction matrices, because I have a feeling we're maybe at a point where we just have way too many simulation chambers to keep up with what we were doing before. The good news is we can complete some quests here by getting a generalized alien prediction, and of course we can make all of these a fair bit faster. I say that only really works if we do in fact have prediction matrices inside of all of these, which we can do if we do a little bit of distribution here. And the reason for that, of course, is just so that we can try and get our first prediction from each of these guys fairly quickly, because that is going to allow us to complete all of these quests. In here, we do want the Martian Claw. In here, we want the Pigra or Pygra ingots. In here, we actually are still waiting on the prediction. This one for the Starcrawler, we want to actually get the Shooting Star piece. And then over here, we, of course, want the Moon Fruit. We could make it with replication, but it is going to be easier, I think, to just make it via the hostile neural network system. The Modular is done. Let's get the Modular hide. And then over here, could I please get like a single piece of Moon Fruit? There it is, alien zombie prediction. That's not actually a quest that we need to complete. We just need to log that in. Okay, I think we are pretty much good to go then. Let me lock these, I guess, first and foremost. And then let's grab one of each, ideally not whilst holding our atomic disassembler. Let's go 1, 1, 1, 1, and 1. Cool, that is almost that quest line complete. The final thing that we need to do is we need to craft up an alien ingot, which we can either do with the reaction chamber or we can do with the empowerer. I think much like with the debris at the start of the episode, I think it's going to make a lot more sense for us to just teach our system how to make this using the reaction chamber as opposed to trying to do this via the empowerer. The empowerer will work, but it's just going to be slow, I think, in the long run and really not so worth it. So let me do one of these, encode, and let's throw that over in here. Cool. And so with that, we should now then, in that case, just be able to request an alien ingot, start, and boom. Nice. And I think that's another quest line complete. It is nice. And so that puts us onto the LUNAR TECHNIUM quest line. It puts us onto the quest line that wants the LUNAR TECHNIUM machine and, of course, the LUNAR TECHNIUM ingots. So to make the LUNAR TECHNIUM machine, we need to combine up 6 alien ingots, which should be fine. Can we request 5 more? Not quite, but these are, of course, going to come in slowly but surely over time. Again, it's possible that this might not be fast enough. It does already have an ultimate Technium machine frame in it, so swapping that out to Hellish would make it faster, and obviously swapping it out to Luna would make it even faster. Whether or not that's worth it is a different question, of course. We could do one of these to try and make it a bit faster at extracting when we do speed it up, and of course we could do the same with Elite as well. Again, whether or not that's actually a long-term solution is a different question. They are all going to get kind of clogged a little bit at that point, but I think that's fine. I think that does make it a tiny bit faster. And again, eventually we'll back up on all of these to the point where it's not going to be a problem. While we wait to back up on that though, we also need another Hellish Technium machine frame. That bit should be fine, and is. We also need 6 unstable matter. Again, also should be fine. If we turn off this guy, we can then just go ahead and put some more fungus into our replication system, and that's probably going to get us all of the unstable matter that we need. Chat has pointed out that you can craft the fungus here into compressed fungus. It might not be a terrible idea for us to get a compacting drawer and actually place it down in the nether and kind of pipe the fungus into there so that we actually have a ton of it in compressed form ready to go. That's going to make it even easier for us to get unstable matter in the future. For now, though, we should have some unstable matter. In fact, I think we have so much that we might actually start backing up in that drawer as well, because I'm assuming this guy is going to fill up pretty soon. We can make, I think, 52 more with what we already have inside of our replication system. And so now it is just the alien ingots that we need. Let me do another quick check here. Can I get 5 more of these? I cannot. I'm missing 4 shooting star pieces, which is this guy right here. So you know what? Let's do one of these. We can go even further. We can go all the way up to 64x and make that real fast. And that should get us the shooting stars that we need, hopefully, surprisingly quickly. And there we go, 11 shooting star pieces. Let's request 5 more alien ingots. And it says partial plan, missing ingredients. I mean, are we missing water? We are. So we're going to have to take a quick tangent here. I think to get 8 more of the 256k storage components, because we have been running into a problem, and that problem is that we just don't have enough water being made by our mechanism pump to keep up with the purified water demand. In here, a lot of these don't have purified water because of the fact that we're just not making it fast enough, and we're not making it fast enough not because of the fact that we can't make it fast enough with the machinery and infrastructure we have, but because over here you'll see this tank is just empty. We don't have the water being generated quick enough. The good news, of course, is that we can hopefully make an infinity water cell fairly easily now, and then just whack that into our system to give us access to infinite water, and then from there we can hopefully forget about having water problems altogether. And once the 8 256k storage components are crafted, we then of course just need to get our infinity blueprint, which is hiding out over here, and do a quick one of these. Whilst that processes, we do also need to get a 256,000 bucket tank full of water. So over here we do have the ultimate tank. What I'm going to do, I guess, I'm going to disconnect this. I'm then going to time in a bottle this. That should very quickly fill that up. It does. Fantastic. We'll then go ahead and swap out of fast mode so we don't break this too quickly and break anything else. Perfect. And so now with that, we should be basically good to go. I am going to replace down a tank here. We shouldn't really need it for any of our AE2 stuff, but there are still some aspects of the base that kind of rely on the XNet moving the water around. And so just to make sure that system doesn't break, I'm going to put that down as well. Back up over here, this is basically done. Fantastic. And that should be everything for the infinite water cell. It is. Nice. We are going to have to actually make another ME drive if we want to store even more of those in the future, but now we've got 2.1 billion water, infinite water available to us, and we should be able to request those alien ingots. Can I get 5 more of these? Start and start. I totally can. And they're done almost instantaneously, and with that we have the LUNAR TECHNIUM machine frame. Fantastic. So to build this guy, which again does need to be done on the moon, we of course need to buy the LUNAR TECHNIUM placer. Perfect. We don't need to buy it, but I'm going to buy it because it's easier. And then we need a fair few things. We need moonstone bricks, ostrom blocks, dimensional detectors, Neptune blocks, Mars stone bricks, 70 reinforced machine casing, 16 machine circuitry, 1 moon globe, 8 Venus stone bricks, 9 cheese blocks, 12 Mercury stone bricks, 9 dash blocks, and 9 rocket launch pads. So we can actually reuse our rocket launch pads here, which is good because we're not going to use the rocket again, I don't think. And there's a lot of stuff there, but a lot of it is stuff that we either have already made a ton before, or it is stuff that's really not too difficult to get. For example, moon bricks we might already have. We do. We can just take those out. Then, for example, ostrom blocks, I think are just blocks of ostrom, which we can get by running this, of course, through the interdimensional extractor over on the moon. We can also just craft the ones we have. That's not quite enough, but we can get more of those fairly easily. And then things like the Venus stone bricks, I think are just Venus stone crafted, you guessed it, into brick form. And we just need 8 of those. And then I think the same is true for the 12 Mercury stone bricks at the bottom and the 16 Mars stone bricks as well. So if we go Mercury, we can do something like this and get 12 of those. And then for the Mars, we have excess of that as well. So we can go ahead and get 16 of these. And like I said, I think everything else there is basically stuff we've already made a bunch before and that our system can request. And so I'm going to go ahead and request all of the things that we need to put this down, and we'll see if we can't get it built on the moon. And again, a bunch of autocraft requesting later. We have everything apart from the moon globe, and thankfully the moon globe is fairly easy to make, just like the other globes before it. This time, all we have to do is throw in 1 block of cheese into here, and that is going to go ahead and make us a moon globe. Of course, if we do one of these, we can make that a tiny bit faster, or at least a lot bit faster. There we go. And then over here, right-click, shift-right-click, and we get the LUNAR TECHNIUM machine. Nice. And so now, if we want to actually try and make our first LUNAR TECHNIUM, we need 4 dash gears, 32 Venus stone. Do we have 32 Venus stone? We have some Venus stone. We do have 32 Venus stone. Nice. Let me throw that into there. We can knock that off the list. So we need 4 dash gears. We need 4 ostrom rods, 16 moon fruit, which we probably also have actually. We do. Let me throw that in as well. On top of that, we need 1 hellish technium. That's difficult, but we do have it. Perfect. Let's throw you in there as well. Along with 4 alien ingots. That is definitely going to be requestable. And start. And also, thankfully, very, very fast as well. From there, we need 4 cheese blocks. We have the cheese blocks. We've got 40 cheese blocks, and they are coming in passively, which is good. And then 8 Neptunium and 32 moonstone bricks. So we have 32 moonstone bricks in our inventory. Perfect. So now we just need the dash gears, the Neptunium plates, and the Ostrom rods. Those are all pretty straightforward. We just take the dash, the Neptunium, and the Ostrom dust, of course, and then over here, we just can drop those in and, accelerate that all the way up. And then, of course, we can run those through whichever metal press we need to run it through in order to actually get the rods, the plates, or the gears. And then from there, we do need four other rectangular bar specifications. We need some of the easier ones, like power. We need lunar gas, which, as we saw earlier, we can get with a chemical oxidizer, and we would need some of the lunar dust, but that should be fine. Again, eventually we'll automate this in such a way that we have it stored somewhere when we export it to the machine. For now, though, I am going to do it kind of manually. I'm going to make one lunar technium ingot, and then we'll look at automating it kind of fully in the next episode, I think. And then on top of that, we also need to get a temperature of greater than 600 degrees Celsius. And the tricky bit is that we also need 48 buckets of fuel, the same fuel that we put in the rocket. And that's difficult because it needs the empowered oil, which we need to do the dropping for. It shouldn't be impossible to do, but it's going to be a tricky system to automate. As far as the temperature is concerned, I think we just get the resistive heater, kind of in the exact same way that we were doing for our thermal evaporation plants. And we just specify how much power we need to give to it or how much power we want it to burn to allow it to actually produce the required amount of heat. And so real quick, let me grab a quantum entangler porter. Let's put that quantum entangler porter down underneath here. Of course, make sure it's set to output power. We'll say on all sides here. And we'll also, of course, make sure it's set to the right frequency, because then we need to grab some universal cable and we need to run some over to this guy so we can get that lunar gas, and over this way so we can power the resistive heater. So in here, we need to get the temperature up. Now the temperature is given in R. I don't know if I can change the temperature units. I can just click it and it changes the temperature units. There we go. Okay, so we're at 16C. Okay. And falling. So if I set this to like 5,000, that is hopefully going to get some power. I can't help but notice that it looks like it's not getting power. I think we might actually have to run the cable around to here like that. There we go. Okay, so now we're talking. All right. That is increasing in temperature. It's increasing in temperature quite rapidly, actually. If 600C is all we need, 5,000 is too far. Let me try 2,500. Because now we're up at 900. We're up a lot higher than we need to be. This is at like 10,000 Celsius, so it's not really kind of moving over, but that's fine. So that now seems to be more than hot enough. And so, real quick, I'm going to go ahead and make the dash gears, the Neptunium plates, and the Ostrom rods, just like we did earlier. I'll also get some more of the enriched moon dust via the moonstone, which you can get via the moon cobblestone, via the moonstone, and we'll get that into here to make the lunar gas. And then from there, we'll take a look at what we're going to do in terms of fuel. All right, boom, boom, and boom. We now have all of the ingredients required. We just need to get the fuel. We even have the lunar gas in here as well. That's being made. So, back over here, I did make a quick tweak at the suggestion of a member of the Twitch chat. Over here, we have just moved the redstone on this metal press. Earlier in the episode, we did see that whenever we tried to make an Ostrom rod on here, it didn't work because this metal press was turned off because the redstone signal was passing through this metal press into this metal press. So what we've done is we've kind of taken that logic and just moved the redstone signal out by a block. So now the redstone signal passes through this block before going into this metal press. That successfully stops this metal press. It does increase the amount of cyanite plates we hold a little bit because the redstone is now slightly longer in length, and so we need a higher signal to get here. But now it successfully just stops the one metal press and not both of them. The reason this was necessary is it turns out that the Ostrom rods and the Neptunium plates have to be made in the metal press. You cannot make these in the multi-block smeltery, and so when we teach our system to make Ostrom rods, we're going to have to do it with the metal press here, and so this was basically necessary. Now, though, we need fuel, and so I think there's a few things that we need to do here. The making of fuel is done in the refinery. That's fine. And in fact, we can, I think, do this with AE2. So, for example, our AE2 system already has access to the oil on the moon. And so if we do this, we can take a pattern and a pattern provider, And we can basically throw this down onto the refinery. I don't think it matters really which side we put it on. We might as well put it on this side because there's an 82 cable here. If I put this down here and point it that way, I'm fairly certain that we can do this and we can do this. And that's going to go ahead and, if we have empowered oil and regular oil, place it into the refinery and then produce fuel. That bit is kind of the easy bit. Working our way back from there, to make empowered oil, that's where it gets a little tricky because we have to drop empowered canola seeds into crystallized oil. And then to get the empowered canola seeds, we obviously have to do this setup right here. Unfortunately, this setup can't be done with the reaction chamber, so we are going to have to use the empowerer. That's fine. To get the crystallized canola seeds, this is where we're going to have to set up, I think, another one of these. So we have a constant supply of crystallized canola. That shouldn't be too difficult to do. This was not very difficult for us to do. I think we're going to duplicate this setup and have the canola being made automatically, which it is. We are going to probably move this somewhere else, like so we have it kind of dedicated and maybe a bit faster. Over here, let's put that pattern in like this. So once we have crystallized canola coming in automatically, we should then be able to request the empowered canola automatically. And then from there, we need to get the crystallized oil, which we get from the refined oil and crystallized seed. And the refined oil, of course, we're getting from the barrel over here. So what we're going to have to do, first of all, let me grab, do we have a spare cloche? We do have a spare cloche. Let me take this cloche and let me set this up somewhere with a storage drawer that's connected to our system so that we can actually use the canola and the canola seeds that we have. So I've gone ahead and moved the canola over to here. I've put in 1% speed 1, 1% speed 3, and 1 fixed speed 1 upgrade. That takes us down to, I believe, the fastest we can make it, which is once every 40 ticks. Of course, we could put more of these down if we needed more canola. That, though, is being stored in here with the remote upgrade. And then over here, I've gone ahead and duplicated the same setup that we were using before. This time, we have canola seeds being exported here into this drawer, which does have a downgrade. We're then extracting. We've got the same atomic reconstructor set up with the redstone comparator and the redstone upgrade here, giving a redstone signal to stop that extracting. And over here, we have the crystallized canola seeds, again, with a downgrade and a remote upgrade. So those are now accessible to the system. Over here, I've moved the setup we had previously. So right here, we have our canola press, which does need power, actually. Let me get a quantum entangler porter. I'll request another 10 of those, and we'll just put one on the top there so that this is working. This is receiving canola. It's turning it into canola oil. Then we're sending that down to the fermenting barrel, which is turning that into fermented canola oil. And we just need to get an ME storage bus, place that down right about here, and that should now make the refined canola oil available to the system. And it does. Cool. And so now what we need to do is we need to take that refined canola oil and we need to place it down in the world. If I'm not mistaken, I think that the formation plane is able to place liquids down in the world. Let me quickly make sure this is set to power so that this actually works. Like that. And then is that working? It is indeed getting power. Perfect. Let me get a formation plane and let's see if we can't use that to place the refined canola in the world. And if I'm not mistaken, you can also use a formation plane to drop crystallized canola seeds into the world as well. And then we might even be able to use an annihilation plane specifically to pick up the crystallized oil once it's been converted. All right, so I've made 2 more active formation planes and 1 more annihilation plane. And so I think the idea here is that we're going to set up a little area to drop the oil into. And essentially, we're going to put down 1 formation plane and 1 annihilation plane. So the formation plane here is going to place down the refined canola oil. So if we do this, once we connect it to the system, our system is going to place this refined canola oil into the world. We want the annihilation plane to pick it up once it's in crystallized form. And I think in a similar sense to what we've done over here, we might have to do that via the use of like a tank. I don't know how we would necessarily filter the tank, although actually I guess we'd filter the tank via a storage bus, right? So if we can get another storage bus here, like this, we can then take that storage bus, place it onto the tank. This is going to be on its own little subnetwork, and the idea here is that we're going to specify in here that we just want you to hold crystallized oil. So as soon as this sees crystallized oil, and it sees that it has a place to put it, it should go ahead and place that into the tank. And then the third formation plane here, which I'm going to put like this one is going to be used to drop the item in. So inside here, you can change the block placement to be blocks will be placed as block, or blocks will be dropped as items. If we change it to blocks will be dropped as items, we can then drop in the crystallized canola to do the conversion. So let me take a crystallized canola and let me put that in here. Now we might have to do some tweaking to this so that it is not like constantly dropped. We might have to do some redstone signaling to make sure it only drops one when there is refined canola oil there to be dropped. But initially here, let me see about hooking this up and let's see if we can actually make this work. So you're going to go like that. We then want a quartz fiber to go down kind of right about here to make sure that this is connected and working, but is on like a separate channel. And then down here, we just need to run this over to our dense cable. I am going to run a separate line here because I don't know how many channels we've used on this line, but I do know that this is less than 8. So that looks like it's working. It's making crystallized canola oil. So it's putting it down, it's dropping the item, and it's doing it surprisingly quickly, actually. And that's making the crystallized oil. Now, the thing is, we have to do this a second time here, because now, see, this is the problem. The problem is that if we don't have enough refined canola oil to place down, now it's just dropping like an endless amount of crystallized canola seeds. And I'm going to turn that off temporarily. And that's also going to cause all of our seeds over here to just get turned into crystallized canola seeds, because as soon as these get used up, more get zapped, which is not ideal. We, of course, do need to kind of duplicate this setup because it's not just one tier. We need to do this again. We need to take empowered canola seeds, which, of course, we can get via this setup over here. We've put in the recipe for it. We do need to, in here, specify that we want the center empowerer to receive the crystallized canola, and that we want the rest of these to receive just regular canola seeds. But the second setup is basically the exact same. We're just going to use the empowered canola seeds and drop those into the crystallized oil to convert it into empowered oil. Chat makes a good point here in that we can potentially do this all in one go. If we change this from crystallized oil to empowered oil, we could potentially send both. And another suggestion that's kind of being flirted is that if we were to kind of disconnect this, of course, the way this is working, what we can potentially do is get an ME interface. The ME interface here is going to be used as like a storage device, because here, I believe, or I'm being told, that this is able to hold fluid. So if I do this and this, can I I'm assuming that I can store crystallized oil in this, kind of in the exact same way that we were doing earlier in the playthrough. So the suggestion that's being made is that instead of making it continuously, we do something like this. We put down a pattern provider pointing at the ME interface like this, and then back over here, we create a custom pattern. And that custom pattern is basically going to teach our system how to make the empowered oil. It's going to do that by sending over one refined canola oil, one empowered canola seed, and one of the crystallized canola seeds. Like this. If we encode that, that's going to send all 3 items to this ME interface. So if I put you in here, then the idea is that's going to store these 3 in there. With that connected up, I believe these should have access to them. And so I think, let's give it a try. Let me connect that up. If we do this. So it looks like the ME interface doesn't connect through the pattern provider, which is actually good for us, because I think what we want to do here is put down a quartz fiber in such a way that this doesn't connect. So if I disconnect that real quick, like this, I want to put a quartz fiber here and then a glass cable here. That should bring that online, but I'm hoping that all of this is on like a sub network. So let me pick this up. And then now, if I were to request empowered oil, start, it is hopefully going to send the required items up into here. No. Okay, so we've got something working here. What we've done is I've put down a storage bus. This is after the quartz fiber, so this is kind of disconnected from the network. And so what happens here, when this pattern provider sends the canola oil up, the canola oil goes into this tank. We've also specified on the storage bus here to store the refined canola oil in here. And then, of course, once it's in here, it's then available to this formation plane, which then places it down. That works. We do have some weirdness going on here. The weirdness going on is that in here, so I have a couple of requests in. Let me cancel these requests like this. if I request this, if I click next and start, nothing happens. Like, it doesn't put anything into the ME interface. If I drag this over, it puts all 3 items in the interface. Interesting. So then from there, I believe it should put this refined canola oil into here. At least it did the first time. And then the idea here is that we're going to tell this guy to drop these. We might need to do the same thing again. Like, we might need another storage bus with another storage drawer that's going to hold the 2 items coming from here. So for example, if I did this and this, I'm hoping that we can then have this. There we go. Look at that. It held both of them, which is what we want. Let me lock that and do this. That's then going to drop what it needs to drop until it makes the right stuff. From there, let me empty this tank out, which is easier said than done. Do I have a spare tank? I don't think I do. Let me request another ultimate fluid tank. Actually, no, this one is empty. Cool. So let's do... Whoops. Let's do this. That is now down and is specified to empowered oil. So once there is empowered oil there, that's when, presumably, the annihilation plane, there we go, is going to break it. Okay, so I think we're kind of onto something here. Let me make sure we picked up all the junk we have. So we picked up all the junk. We've canceled all of the previous crafts. So now, I think, as janky as this is, it might work. Although I think in here we have to do the same thing. We might have to do this and this, like that. Okay, this looks odd, because for some reason it looks like there's a bucket of oil in here that's not going anywhere, but this does now work. If I show you this, first of all, it doesn't fully work because the system is not getting the oil back. What we need to do is we need to get another bus, one last bus, and we need to put that last bus onto here, and that needs to be a bus that's actually connected to the main network, so the main network can see that it has it. So let's do one of these, and then we're going to connect that up in such a way that it connects to the main network, not the kind of small little sub-network that we have here. So as soon as we get some of these, we can then run a cable like this to the main line. We can do something like that, and that should just work. So now, presumably, empowered oil is available. So if I click in here, middle click, next, start, it sends a bucket to here. It's in there, then places it down. Also, the seeds are placed down, and look at that, we have a 4th bucket. Okay, so it does work. It happens. So what we've done, to run this through real quick, is we have a pattern provider here, which is told to send 1 bucket of refined canola oil, that's the stuff we're making in our fermenting barrel, over into the ME interface right here, because we need a place that can receive both items and fluids, and the ME interface supposedly is the only thing that can do it. So here we're sending the refined canola oil with 1 empowered canola seed and 1 crystallized canola seed. So when we request that, if we don't have an empowered canola seed, it will be requested via this setup right here, because our system knows how to make it. If I click next and start, it'll do this and actually make one for us. Then it will send over both the empowered and the crystallized seed to this ME interface. Then, on a little subnetwork, so we have the quartz fiber, everything here after the pattern provider is not connected. So thankfully, these don't connect through each other. The pattern provider doesn't provide channel to the ME interface. So all of this here on the top of the platform is disconnected. And so here we have our storage bus that is filtered to canola oil. That goes into this tank. So it pulls it from here, puts it into this tank. Then we have another storage bus filtered, well, not filtered, but we could filter it, I guess, for the empowered canola and the crystallized canola. It is kind of filtered because the door is locked, that's all it can receive. Again, the items from here are pushed into here. Then we have our formation plane, which places down the refined canola oil. For whatever reason, it can't pull it from here. That's why we have the tank. It can pull it from the tank and places it down in the world. Then the other formation plane pulls from the drawer. Again, it can't pull from here for whatever reason, so it pulls from the drawer, drops them both in the world. Then the conversion happens, so immediately the refined canola oil is converted to crystallized oil, and then also immediately the crystallized oil is converted to empowered oil because the empowered canola seed is also already there, at which point the annihilation plane, which is on its own network, also then realizes, hey, there's some empowered canola oil here, and I have a place to put empowered canola oil. I'm going to pick that up and dump it into there. And so now if I were to request like 10 buckets worth, at that point we don't have enough canola, so we would have to look at increasing the speed of this, which I think we can really only do by putting down a ton of these. Like, we might have to put down 5, 10, 20 canola presses and fermenting barrels to make this real fast. But for now, if I were to request, let's say 4 more, because we can do that, and start, it should send 4 buckets of oil over, and it should send 4 of each of these over. You can see more are being made to be sent over as well. And if it's working, we should see this go from 4 buckets of empowered oil eventually up to 8 buckets of empowered oil, which is hopefully exactly what we'll see. Okay, so I've been tinkering with this with the Twitch chat for far too long now, but I think we have a system that works. The problem we were running into last time is that whenever we requested more than 1 bucket at once, it would send all of the refined canola to this tank, but then the active formation plane would just put all of the buckets down, and that would delete some of the liquids. For example, if you take a bucket of water and you put it into water that's already there, it just takes the bucket and you lose a bucket of water. So what was happening is all of the refined canola oil that we have was just getting placed down on top of each other before the conversion was happening, and that meant we only ever got 1 bucket of canola out, which was not good. A few more things we've changed. At the bottom here, we've put down an import bus instead of a storage bus, because if you put a storage bus down, the craft never finishes, because you have to actually import the oil into the system. And so what I've done, I put down an importer, and over here, I've got the old tank with an external storage on it, so it basically just pulls it from that tank round into there, but that is enough to trigger the system to think that the craft has completed. Over here, another thing I've done, I've taken all these out, so this has nothing in it, and in here, I've changed this to blocking mode. Do not push crafting ingredients if inventory contains a pattern input. The same thing we did over here as well. That basically means that it's only ever going to try and do 1 bucket of oil at a time, which means that we're not going to have that problem where the formation plane keeps putting multiple down. So now, if I were to go ahead and request 2 buckets and start, it should make 1 bucket, after it's empowered the seed, of course, and put it in the tank, and then import it, and then it's going to do another bucket after that, only after the first one's done, and import it, and the autocraft is complete. It works. Okay, so we have automated, finally, the production of empowered oil, and so now, all the way down here, this should, we should be able to request fuel, I think. We should be able to request some fuel. The fuel is made at a 1 to 2, so it only takes 1. So in theory, we've got how many? We've got 12 buckets of empowered oil. We do need 24 buckets of empowered oil to actually make the 48 buckets of fuel we need. I don't think we have enough refined oil to request 12 more empowered oil, but if we are just trying to make 1 LUNAR TECHNIUM for now, what we can do is we can go ahead and accelerate this like crazy. Apparently that's too much power usage, but if we accelerate that, we can then also go ahead and accelerate that, and we just need some more of this refined canola oil. And I guess whilst we wait, we can also see if the fuel thing does work. So if I wanted 24 buckets of fuel, that says it works. I have been told by the Twitch chat that this works, you can just have the one pattern provider piping into the one side. We're going to find out if that works. There is already some oil in here, which is not ideal, but it's not going to be a problem, I don't think. So let me try 24 and start. Of course, for that, we're going to want to do the same thing, I think. We're going to want to have an import bus on the front of that to import the fuel that's made, and then we're going to want to put a tank somewhere to collect it as well. So let me quickly do that, and let me get another ultimate tank down so we can actually store the fuel once it's ready. So I've done the exact same thing here. Here we've got a storage bus for the empowered oil. Right above it, I've put down another storage bus for fuel, so this is going to store all of our fuel. And so now, down here, we also have the import bus connected. Let's give that a try. If I wanted to request 24 buckets of fuel and start, it can send both items over, which is good. And of course, we just need acceleration cards. It's also really fast, which is also good. And so the importer there pulls it in nice and fast. Good. Okay, that is really good news for us. We managed to get 6 more buckets of canola. So in theory, we could request, I think, 6 more buckets of empowered. Let me click start on that, and that will hopefully come in. Of course, going forward, as I mentioned, we're going to have to just get a ton more of the canola presses and the fermenting barrels. We might even need more cloches as well, because it looks like we don't even have that much canola being stored, so we might just need to increase kind of everything here, because we do need 48 buckets of fuel per LUNAR TECHNIUM, so it's going to be quite something to get that going. But the good news is that this is working. The bad news is that this has the wrong item in it. Hold on, let me pick that up. I'm very happy to see that that empowered craft did work. Okay, for some reason there's refined canola oil in the top bit there. I don't know why there's refined canola oil in the top bit. It might be that the barrel pushes up. What I'm going to do, just to be safe, I'm going to change this, not like that. I'm going to change this to push. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this like this, so it goes to push, and I'll change this to pull. At which point I think this might work, so I think by default this pushes up, which can sometimes be fine, but for our setup it's actively bad. I'm hopeful that that's not going to push up into there if I set it to push, but we'll see. So let's make that faster, and let's keep going until we have enough canola oil. With the extra empowered oil, we're basically halfway there, but we need to get 12 buckets of empowered, which means we need 12 buckets of refined canola, at which point we can then get the 48 that we need, and then from there we just need to take the fuel over to the moon, and we should be able to finally get our first bit of lunar technium. Alright, I've just requested another 24 buckets of fuel. The good news is that even though the empowered oil setup is pretty slow, the fuel making part is real fast. And so I'm hoping here that if I take this ultimate tank, can I do this? I can do this. Can I click this a bunch? I guess I'm going to click it 48 times, because I'm then going to take this tank over to the moon. Eventually, of course, we're going to export it with an entangled block, just like we've done with our other setups. But for now, I'm going to make sure this is in bucket mode, and I'm going to go ahead and just dump all that in there. And then finally, we have our first lunar technium ingot. Look at that, we can craft it into lunar technium nuggets, and presumably, if it's not too difficult, we can craft up a lunar machine frame. I think we can if we steal one of these dash gears here. Can I do one of these? I totally can. That gets us the lunar technium machine frame, and with that, we're actually surprisingly close to completing the lunar technium questline here. We just need one turbine coil wire, which we could make because we do have spare nuggets, and we also need to make a turbine controller. So with lunar technium almost automated, like we are surprisingly close actually to full automation on this, with it almost automated, we do have the option now, I believe, of getting more power with turbines. Whether or not it's necessary or worth it is TBD, because we are making a lot of power currently. I don't think we're anywhere close to using all of our power at the moment. We're using like 150 to 250,000, and we're generating 500,000 FE per tick still. And if we wanted to, once this fills up, we could make it even bigger just to get an even bigger buffer going. But I believe this is going to allow us to produce just a staggering amount of power at some point in the not so distant future. But I think next time we'll come back, we'll do a little bit of work to finalize the automation of lunar technium. We'll probably look at setting up like 1 billion fermenting barrels and canola presses so that we can make the refined canola oil faster, thus allowing the creation of the empowered canola oil and therefore the fuel faster as well. We'll also do a little bit of work on automating things like the dash gears and the Ostrom rods. Stuff like that just needs to be taught and sent around, of course, through the entangled block with an exporter. And then from there, we're on to the final chapter of the quest book. We've got to do ender eye crafting, regular ender crafting, end technium, and then finally, of course, the final technium, which I have been assured is just horrendous. But that is a problem for future Isaac. For now, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of Techopolis 3 there.